Lynn Sterbenz began as the emergency manager for the city of Bellingham in October of 2018, and she joins us here today. Thanks for joining us today, Lynn.
My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Alaska, born and raised. Both my parents were school teachers, and I grew up in Anchorage, which is a pretty big city, but we spent our summers with both of them being educators. They had the summers off, so we spent our summers out at our cabin, which was off the grid, halfway between Anchorage and Denali National Park.
Wow.
And so, so I grew up with no running water and no electricity out at our cabin every summer, and hunting and fishing, and
a
lot of bear.
Yeah,
a lot of bear.
Did you like that at the time as a kid, like teenager years?
Absolutely, I loved it.
You did?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Okay.
I can remember my mom getting a comment one day as we're both standing in the middle of a river and fishing, and I must have been 16, and some other fisherman walked by and said, "I don't know any other teenagers that would stand out there in the middle of a river on a Saturday," but I did. I just absolutely loved the outdoors. I'm still an outdoor enthusiast, which is why Bellingham is a great fit for me. There's a lot of great outdoorsy things here to do as well. But hunting, fishing, a lot of bear encounters, moose. It was a great way to grow up.
Okay, and then from there, where'd you go?
So I left Alaska in 2005 and came down here to Washington. This is as far as I've gotten, and I don't. I say Washington is the next best thing to Alaska. So I absolutely love it here, and I've been in the Puget Sound since 2005, and it has everything that I love: the mountains and the ocean. So it's a great place.
So when did you realize that you wanted to work in emergency management?
Unknowingly, back when I was in college. I went to the University of Alaska in Anchorage, and I was probably what you might call an adrenaline junkie. So I was really drawn to the first responders, and so I was studying psychology and criminal justice. During the school year, I worked for campus police, and during the summers, I was a wildland firefighter. And so I really lived and breathed what we call the incident command system. It's the structure in which all events and disasters and large emergencies are coordinated. So I lived and breathed it before I really even knew, and absolutely loved those years. I would have continued on in the fire service, but I wanted to have a family as well, and I married another firefighter, so one of us needed to stay home and and have a regular paying job with health benefits. So then I went into what my bachelor's degree was in psychology. Went into social and health services actually for 16 years. And then an opportunity came up when I was living on South Whidbey to write the City of Langley's first comprehensive emergency management plan, working very closely with neighborhoods and community organizations and the churches and the school district, and really doing a lot of community organization, empowering the neighborhoods to do their part in preparedness. And once I started that position, I knew that was going to be my new career, and I've been in it ever since.
Why?
I have a passion for organizing chaos.
It's good having people like you. It's good.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And so I just I feel like I thrive in a chaotic environment like that. Mm-hmm. So it just suits me. It just fits me. Yeah.
So how did you get to Bellingham then?
Okay, so I've kind of bounced around the Puget Sound a bit since 2005. Whidbey Island, Arlington, lived in Arlington, commuted to Everett, worked for the Everett Office of Emergency Management. Port Townsend, I was a director out in Jefferson County. And then I came here. My daughter was attending Western, and so I was visiting a lot and really enjoyed the city, very much so. And lo and behold, it just kind of the stars aligned, and a position came open about the same time that I was moving here anyway. So it was really good timing.
Great. Mm-hmm. Well, good timing for us too as a city to get someone like you. Well, now, what exactly does an emergency manager do?
So, overarching, we help prepare the city for disasters. So that means city employees, the elected officials, senior leadership, as well as businesses, citizens, the students, preparing for any kind of natural hazard that may happen here in Bellingham, Whatcom County, as well as man-made disasters.
Okay.
And so that there's different phases of that. There's not just preparing, like having enough food and water and securing your TV to the wall or to the bookshelf, but there's also mitigation. What kind of infrastructure can we mitigate to lessen the impacts of the event, of the incident, such as seismic retrofitting of buildings. There's also prevention, although there's not a lot of disaster that we can prevent, but there are a few prevention strategies that we put into place. And then we have response. We have to train and practice and plan for how we're going to respond. Mm-hmm. That takes up a lot of time. And then there's recovery. How are we going to recover afterwards? How is the city going to recover? So there's all those different phases that we look at.
Okay. What does an average day look like for you?
An average day, I get a lot of phone calls from citizens, nursing home facilities, schools, neighborhood associations, wanting presentations, wanting to know how they can be better prepared, helping them with their plans, or just coming and doing a presentation for their staff, for their associations, for their membership, and understanding the specific hazards in Bellingham. Mm-hmm. I get a lot of calls from my colleagues throughout the whole Puget Sound. We work very collaboratively with county emergency management in the region, with other cities and county emergency managements, all of our neighboring counties. And then as a state as well, we have state associations and state membership and state committees of all state emergency management issues. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my day-to-day work is working on committees or reports or frameworks that we're collaborating with larger stakeholders. And speaking of stakeholders, there's many other stakeholders and partners I work with here in Bellingham and in the county, such as hospital, school district, the refineries, the port. Anyone who may be impacted, basically I need to work with, or may have a resource to offer, or that we would be partnering with. We need to work together. Okay. So a lot of it's planning. I also have a responsibility to do training. I need to train city staff, city departments, our volunteers, and what to expect in a disaster, what their roles and responsibilities will be. We also need to produce exercises. So we do trainings and drills and exercises every year. So there's a lot of different things I work on every day. So I'm always multitasking. Mm-hmm. And always multitasking.
I would think that training and drills would be so important, because when you're in that chaos that you talk about, things can go sideways so quickly. Right?
Exactly. And you can plan, you can write up a plan, but if you don't practice the plan, it doesn't become muscle memory. Right. And so a plan can just sit on a shelf and get dusty. So really exercises are very, very valuable for that reason.
Mm-hmm. So you are also a certified emergency manager. What does that mean? That
means that I went through some specific steps with the International Association of Emergency Managers to gain that credential. And the last count I saw was maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people internationally have achieved that. There's a certain level of education that you need to have, and additional trainings that you must have completed. You need to have some recommendations from your colleagues, but you also have to contribute to the field. So you must have done some sort of trainings or presentations or written scholarly articles, and you also have to have received some sort of awards from your local community. And so you put together a large packet and you submit that, and you take a test. You have to pass an exam on emergency management. Mm-hmm. So I achieved that in 2015, I believe it was. Okay. And you have to renew every 5 years. You have to show that you're still doing those things. So I will have to renew next year.
Okay. And is that through FEMA?
No, it's actually through the International Association of Emergency Managers.
Okay.
It's a separate
Okay.
association.
And do you work with FEMA at all?
I do. I do. We have they are also regional. The Region 10 is the Alaska, Washington, Oregon region that we work with, and they're located. One of their offices is located in Bothell.
Oh, okay.
So we do work very closely together.
So what makes Bellingham and Whatcom County unique regarding emergency management?
What makes it unique is its proximity to Canada, to the Canadian border, that there's an I-5 corridor that runs through it with mountains on one side and the ocean on the other. And it's...
Sounds lovely, doesn't it?
It is,
and it is lovely.
lovely.
However, when you're thinking about what could potentially happen, I'm sure all of those factors put together could really create a perfect storm.
Exactly. So we have, and that's probably one of the most common, frequent emergencies that we do have here are those storms, like last year's winter storm in February of 2019. Significant snowfall, right? So yeah, high winds, snow, heavy amounts of rain, urban flooding and river flooding, those are all things that do happen frequently here. There's also a few things that are very infrequent, but very, very possible. We have a volcano in the county, Mount Baker, that it is an active volcano, and so there is a potential for a lahar or the ash debris that may fall on the city of Bellingham. We also are at risk for tsunami inundation. If the earthquake is significant enough that causes a tsunami, we will see the port, primarily the marina, the port district, Fairhaven, ferry terminal, and some of the Boulevard Park. Those are all in our inundation area, so we're working to educate the community about that. And then there's also wildland fire. We are under some summers, when it's very hot and dry, we have a higher fire risk than other summers. But with the steep areas down there by Chuckanut, along that Chuckanut Drive, and the hiking in the parks down there, and the camping with campfires, it's a risk that we have. And we have refineries, and we have a natural gas pipeline, we have water and wastewater treatment facilities, we have the port, we have rails that run through town, we have old coal mines that are underneath Bellingham. There's a number of potential hazards.
And you have a plan for all of them, right?
We do, actually. We do. That's right. We have the city is required by law to have a comprehensive emergency management plan.
And that is updated how often?
Every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
And it is on the website.
All right, all right. In the spring of 2019, there was a new survey that was launched. Tell us about that. It's a collaborative effort, right?
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
With Western Washington University, under the Huxley College of the Environment, has the Disaster Risk Reduction Program. It's a minor. And the director of that program, Rebecca Apache Green, she came to us and asked if we would like to collaborate, the City of Bellingham as well as Whatcom County Emergency Management. And we jumped at this opportunity to do a longitudinal study. And so that her students are helping us survey Bellingham residents and Whatcom County residents on their level of awareness of the natural hazards, as well as their level of preparedness in Whatcom County. And this will be a longitudinal study. The initial project, we hope to go 4 to 5 years, but if we can take that to 10, we'd be even happier. So it should give us some very, very valuable data that will help us shape our public education and outreach program. So are we doing enough to raise the awareness level and promote and encourage people to be prepared? And if we'll find out if we are, and if we aren't, then we'll modify our programs and our strategies.
That's great. What do you like most about your job?
I think what I like the most is being out in the community. I really enjoy going neighborhood to neighborhood, business to business, and just talking with people and the citizens. It's very enjoyable for me to empower citizens and our residents and our visitors to take matters into their own hands, to become more aware and to take steps and just empower them to do that. I love community engagement. That's I'd rather do that than sit behind the desk and write a plan any day, but I have to do both. But yes, that would be the favorite part of my job. It's community outreach.
And what do you like so much about Bellingham?
Oh gosh, I think Bellingham is the most accepting community I've ever lived in. You can just be whoever you want to be here. Everybody is very eclectic and it's accepted. It's a very diverse community. You can just be yourself. You can express yourself any way you choose, and it's very warm and accepting and welcoming. And I love that. I absolutely love that about this city.
Great. What are some challenges with your job?
Some of the biggest challenges are a lot of requirements from the federal government as well as the state government for certain benchmarks we need to meet, credentialing we need to meet, plans we need to meet and develop, and they're not funded mandates. So there's not enough funding for enough staff or resources to really meet all of the mandates that we are given. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of work to be done in our office, and I'm the only full-time person. I have one person on half-time, a little bit under half-time actually, 2 days a week. So it's a bit of a challenge, but that's the way it is pretty much for every emergency management office in the state of Washington. A lot of understaffed offices here, and it's just the nature of the job.
That would be. So what do you wish more people would be aware of regarding emergency preparedness, like constituents in the city?
Great question. I think people tend to put things that are out of sight, out of mind. And so we want people to be aware of, just because a tsunami or the volcano hasn't erupted or we haven't had a large earthquake here anytime in the last 10, 20, 30 years doesn't mean it's not going to happen. All of these things will happen someday. It's eventually. So we want people to put that a little bit more in the forefront of their minds, that it could happen today, it could happen tomorrow. And so please be prepared. There's not going to be enough first responders to return to address all of the calls to 911 after something catastrophic. There just won't be. And so people really will be on their own and relying upon their immediate neighbors and friends and family that live near them for those first few hours, if not up to 2 weeks, depending on how catastrophic things may be. Yeah. Especially when it's the big one that we read a lot about in the Seattle Times. That catastrophic scenario is going to impact the whole Puget Sound, not just us. And so getting more supplies, getting more resources here is going to be virtually impossible. So we will have whatever we have here, and we're not likely to get shipments of extra food and water in anytime soon. So I really want people to understand that and be prepared. Please take a few minutes and just do one thing more than you have yesterday. You'll be better off.
How do you advise from getting too caught up in the fear factor of that, right? Because I'm sure there's a fine line between being prepared and just being completely fearful of all of these things happening.
It's true. It's true. So we aren't. I definitely don't want to invoke fear into our citizens either. Probably. Everyone is afraid of flying, right? So, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are afraid of flying. And we hear the statistic that you're more likely to die in a car accident than you are on a plane, right, statistically. So some people avoid flying, but they don't really understand the statistics. So it's similar to that. I don't want to put that fear into anybody that they are pushed to non-action, but I also don't want them to avoid it completely, thinking that it's never going to happen. So there is a middle ground. Take a few steps, at least have some water, at least have a little bit of food. You don't have to do everything. Some of the literature out there is pages long saying you should have all of these things and you should do all of these things, and that can be overwhelming. So even if you just take 1 or 2 small steps, and the most important being food and water, or have a communication plan with your loved ones. Have some sort of way to reunite with each other if the cell phone towers were to go down. Something like that. If you just choose one thing to do today, that's more than you had the day before. And so we're asking even just that minimum to help you get to a little bit higher preparation level, and helps take the burden off of us as well. And just raising awareness, I think, is the key to being better prepared. If they understand the why is it that that's so important? Why can't I just go down to Walmart and get another case of water? Well, because Walmart may not be able to get restocked, and everybody else who didn't prepare is going to get to Walmart too and clean off the shelves. Things like that. So I think it's really important to get the why, answer the why. That's why we're doing such a big awareness campaign.
Right. In the case of an emergency like that, how does the communication happen? Like if cell phone towers go down, and are we back to terrestrial radio? How do we communicate?
So one of our key phrases in emergency management is redundancy. We want to have as many tools in our toolbox as possible. So we advocate that you have an AM/FM radio that has batteries. We ask you to consider getting a ham radio license or having an FRS, walkie-talkies. We ask you to have a landline still. Landlines are unfortunately being phased out, but it's still a valuable resource in an emergency. Landlines are more likely to survive than the cell phone bandwidth in a disaster, especially a catastrophic emergency. You're also more likely to be able to dial out to someone out of state than you would be to dial right here in Bellingham, another number in Bellingham. It's the way that the circuits work.
Okay.
So we recommend having what we call an out-of-state contact, some family or friend that can serve as sort of a message taker or a relay point, so that if you can't call your daughter or your son across town, you can call your Uncle Joe, let's say in Texas, and Uncle Joe can take everyone's information and share it. We also advise people to tune in to their AM radio stations. We have agreements with our AM radio stations here in the area to broadcast. There's alerts. You'll see wireless emergency alerts that get broadcast whenever there's an Amber Alert, or the presidential alert, or tsunami. Sometimes those go out, and you'll receive those on your cell phones. You didn't sign up for them, but you got them anyway.
Right.
We have access to those software databases as well. We do have an opt-in on our website at whatcomeready.com. Whatcomeready.com. You can sign up to receive our alerts, and that's particularly handy if you don't have a landline, because we can only return phone calls right now to landlines. And then the next best thing is to just listen for information from officials. After a disaster or something catastrophic, watch for information to come from the city and the county officials. There will be press releases. There will be information shared through all of the channels that we possibly can, even if that means putting up flyers at local restaurants and gas stations of, notifying people where they can go for resources. We will turn to as many different ways as we can. We also recruit our first responders, the fire, police, public works crews. Anybody who's out in the community on streets can help us share information.
That's crazy, because if you think about being in a situation like that where there's no Facebook, there's no internet, there's no cellular connection, let's hope it never happens, obviously, right? But it could, and what's the plan for that? So if it means putting up a poster at the corner store, that's what it means.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So we have to be prepared to find all of those possibilities.
Right. But you're ready for that, because that's your job.
Yes.
Yes. How can we, that list of things to do was very, very helpful. Is there a place we can go to find out more?
Sure, absolutely. So we share a website, City of Bellingham and the county, Whatcom County's emergency management offices share a website called whatcomeready.org.
Okay.
And it has lots of great information.
Wonderful. Lynn, thank you for being here today. Very interesting what you do. Thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you for having me.
And let's hope it never happens, but like you said, it might, so we'll be ready. Lynn Sterbenz is the emergency manager for the city of Bellingham, and we'll see you next time on Bellingham Voices.